Okay, we're here on behalf of, well, us, but the Art Directors Guild, Local 7, oops, 800, but the people out here, except for one, were in the other guild, but, and that is local of the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees. So we're actually in an umbrella group with the people that run the films we watch in the multiplex. But we're all here doing our best to give you a little bit of a taste behind what we do, okay? Best start of an introduction is to see what we do. And I think maybe now that we can turn the lights down and play our little show for you. Dim lights, please. Don't close your eyes. Dim lights.
Was
set up, so please, we're going to ask about 20 minutes near the end for you to raise your hand, and if you have a question, and we'll take questions. I'd like to introduce my guests here, or your guests. They are among, if not the top people in the industry, and as you can tell, we can all draw pictures pretty well, but mostly we're here to tell a story. And I'm proud to introduce Anson Jew, Richesson, Rodriguez, and Benton Jew. It's very clever how you did the bookend things over here. I'd like to start out pretty general, and that would be how you originally got into the business, because some of you really want to know that question. So Anson, how did you get into the business to begin with?
Well, for years I've been working in the computer games industry. I worked at LucasArts as an animator, and there's a little bit of storyboarding, in that. But after years of that, the .com thing was starting to slow down, and people weren't buying adventure games anymore, and I kind of freelanced for a while. Meanwhile, my brother was thinking about moving over to LA. Also, he worked at Island. He was thinking of doing some storyboards, and he told me that there was a company up north doing a small indie film called Sky Captain the World Tomorrow, and they were looking for storyboard artists, and I was just kind of wandering around doing some various freelance jobs. And so I ended up working on that, which was a really good show for me because it was a nice long-term show. So I started working on that, and about a year afterwards I moved down here and started working on projects.
Well, it's part of a perseverance, you worked a lot of jobs before you finally, got into the union local, and
yeah, I worked on a lot of different things, games, theme parks, toy design, all kinds of just whatever, a lot of commercials. Managed to do some TV as well, so I ended up doing a lot of superhero or comics related stuff. So I worked on the X-Men, Wolverine and the X-Men TV show. I worked on the 2007 TMNT Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. I worked on a theme park ride for called the Marvel Experience, which is kind of an Avengers thing. And also worked on Fantastic Four and Wonder Woman. So, various things.
Okay, Robin.
Well, probably like a lot of people in here who may be fellow artists and illustrators, I grew up really loving to draw, and when I went to college, I studied art, and probably one of my favorite activities was life drawing, especially gesture drawing. And I made a good friend in my class there, David Lowery, and he is a phenomenal storyboard artist in our industry. And neither one of us, I think, really knew what we wanted to do when we got out of college, but he had a closer idea of being in film, and I wasn't thinking that way at all. He went off, and after a few years, ended up working for Industrial Light and Magic, doing on Willow, that Ron Howard did many years ago. And when he left town to go do that, he was doing commercials, and he called me up and convinced me to take on all his commercial clients. Until that time, I'd never done a storyboard. So that was kind of being thrown into the fire a little bit. But it was great. I actually ended up loving it because it was the kind of drawing that I like to do. Very quick, gestural, lively drawing that tells a story with, with not a lot of rendering or polish, but it gets the excitement and the movement across. And I don't think there's too many industries where you can really use that the film end of it. And after many tries of, kind of trying to get on various productions, not being in the union, I finally did get an opportunity to be on a Disney film that went union. I got in the union, and then after that, I worked on a lot of great projects. An early one for me was Starship Troopers, which going back quite a few years, but that was one of my second or third films that I got to work on, so that was great. And I've worked on a huge variety of films. I haven't really worked on as many of the comic industry ones as some of my fellow artists here. I've worked on probably just a broad gamut of films. I did do Flux a few years back with Charlize Theron starring, and I worked on some horror films like Jennifer's Body by the same director, which I thought was a lot of fun. And just recently I worked with Seth Rogen on Preacher for AMC, which is from a comic, if you guys know it. It's rather violent, but very funny comic. And unfortunately I couldn't put any of that work out because the second season hasn't been released yet. But it's a place for me to draw, and it's a great living for people who love to draw, I think. And the best thing, like Tim says, is perseverance. I actually also teach at Cal State Long Beach, and the one thing I would tell all my students is the sure way that you will not succeed is if you stop trying. So that's how you fail. So you have to keep trying and beating your head against the wall until you get that lucky break.
Okay, Patrick.
And then it's all wine and roses, right?
Yeah, that's
It
fantastic.
becomes very easy after that. I hardly need to try anymore.
Well, I kind of had a couple of starts, but I got a degree in studio art a long time ago, and I didn't know what I was going to do with that, and fine art, and I ended up doing graphic design for a few years, and then I finally hit the wall and was like, this is not what I want to do at all, so I didn't know how to get into the industry, so but I figured I would just go to Gnomon, which is this visual effects school in Hollywood, and see if I could learn Maya. I've been pretty adept with computers and art, so I went there for a while, and then luckily enough there was like a class on previs before there was classes on previs, basically, so I got to take a class and then do an assignment, and then that was enough to get a job. So in pre-visualization, or previs as they kind of call it, you really only work on big budget features because those are the features who can really afford it. So right away I got to work on some big budget features, which is cool. And then I was kind of turned off from previs. It was really early on, I guess around 2005, and it was kind of like during the time of the EA days where there was a lot of pillowcases and sleeping bags under the table, and it just wasn't really a very good living at the time. So I tried to venture away from it as much as I could. I ended up doing kind of like 3D layout, and I worked on at South Park for a half season, and I kind of bounced around and was just trying to find my place. And then I got a call to go work on Cowboys and Aliens, which was my break into the union, and that was because I had just kind of worked all over the place, and so I ended up animating other people's storyboards on that, and that was really exciting. I got into the union, and I got to do a little bit of drawing and some animation, and it was kind of this eclectic artist, and that's what I've kind of been since. So I just put my previs up there because it's like a lot of superhero work, but I've done like storyboards and concept art, and I kind of just continue to be a hybrid artist, kind of taking what I can get. And right now I'm doing post-visualization, which is after they've actually shot the plates, they'll kind of comp over the previs, or we usually have to reanimate it, so it's not like just a slap comp. But it's exciting, so we're just helping out, making the production go, and at the same time I'm still a card-carrying union member, so I can do other things, but right now that's what I'm doing. I've done that. I just finished up on the Justice League. I thought it was funny that it was listed like Wrinkle in Time and Justice League, and I'm like, yeah, I can't say anything at all. I can't even say what I'm working on right now.
You can say what you're working on, you just can't, tell the truth, so lie about it.
I finished the Justice League, and I can't even say what I'm working on right now, but that's fine. It's good to be employed, so all this stuff will just be really old on the reel for a while. So anyways, I guess that's just about it.
Okay, well, Benton.
Okay, so when I was growing up, I always was drawing, since I was like 5 years old. Me and my brother, we would both do comics, and we would both do little separate movies and things like that. And my goal when I grew up was to be a comic artist. That was a big driving force behind everything that I was doing. And I went to art school, and I met during one of their brown bag professional talks, they had a storyboard artist named Stan Fleming who was there. I went to the Academy of Art College, and he was visiting and just looking at people's portfolios. And he was a storyboard artist on Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade and quite a few others. He's an incredible storyboardist, incredible artist. And he looked at my work, he liked my kind of old school looking, illustrative comic book style of some stuff that I had done. And that was less I saw him for a while, and then a couple of years later, on my last year of art school, I got a call for a show that he had to turn down because of another obligation. But he called up the art school and recommended me to work on it. So they called me. It's my last year of school, and I spent 4 days, at the academy, or one day a week at the academy with Drew Struzan teaching, and then the remaining 4 days I was working at ILM on a project called Bodyboards, which was not a movie, but it was a ride for Epcot Center. So it was combining kind of the storyboarding. That was my first experience actually doing professional storyboards, and was sort of combining the comic book skills that I learned, storytelling and such like that, but also the filmmaking. And so from that show, I was hired on at ILM as an illustrator and visual effects art director. And so from that, I was able to work on a lot of comic book type movies, Men in Black. I worked on 3 different versions of the Hulk that, one of them didn't get made, and there was the Ang Lee version that was one of the last projects I worked on. And I was at ILM for 13 years, and then when I left ILM, I moved down to LA, and I had just finished working on Phantom Menace, and so I sort of had a reputation from the big hype that was going around that show at the time. And so my name was getting out within the community a little bit. So when I moved into LA, I was trying to find work, and I found out that Terminator 3 was looking for people, and so that was the first job I got hired on as a union storyboard artist. And I was very lucky that the first year I was in Los Angeles, I was able to find a job that was becoming a union and join the union, which was a big deal. And so that was on 9/11 that I moved here. So since then, I've been working on all kinds of movies and a lot of movies that are comic related. Like recently worked on Logan, and I worked on Wonder Woman, and I worked on Fantastic Four, and I worked on the 3rd version of the Incredible Hulk, the Ed Norton version, and then Cowboys and Aliens, and a few other comic book related things. So my experience with comic books that married with my experience in films really helped out. So that's where I am now.
I met Benton. We worked on a Roland Emmerich film together, and it was a Roland Emmerich film, Stargate, that I got into the union on. Didn't know it at the time, but I put in my 30 days, and then sometime later it says, "Hey, this whole production is in union," and he says, "Oh, what does that mean?" "That means you're in the union, boy." But I had one of the first films I ever worked on was actually a Terminator ripoff called Class of 1999, which that was the future at the time. And it had the distinction of having my storyboards inked by Joe Musso, the president of the union at that time. So, and I hated it. I wanted a comic book style inking because I was used to working in comic books before that, comic books and animation. And he kind of did it kind of in an old westy kind of way, probably with a buck knife. I don't know exactly what he used to make those marks. They did not resemble comic book marks. So I got in the slow way. I had to languish working in comics for a little while, and then the animation industry and commercials before I finally, there were a few, you call it direct to video. It's like that went away with Blockbuster. You don't hear that very often, but there used to be movies that were made that way. I never saw a movie theater. Anyway, after that, I worked on a lot of things. I got a couple of things off my bucket list, including Jurassic Park or Jurassic World. I finally got to do one of those. I thought Dave Lowery was going to hog all of those. Since we've been mentioning comic book movies or comic book related movies, because a lot of times things go from comics to movies and movies to comics. I'll start with Anson again. Is there anything about working on comic book related properties that you feel is different than just working on straight film or even in science fiction?
In my case, I think a lot of people who are in storyboards kind of start off, they probably learn how to draw a lot from comic books. So they get all their anatomy and they get all their storytelling a lot from comic books. So when you get in there and you're actually drawing superhero related material, it's like kind of like second nature. You're used to drawing people doing this, and then in most cases you don't end up drawing that type of thing. So it felt very, very natural, almost like a homecoming to work on a superhero movie, because that's what I drew as a kid. So doing that type of material is just it's how it feels very strange. You just kind of I hadn't drawn superhero stuff in a long time, and jumping onto my first superhero project was just like doing that.
Does it ever? This is a question for everybody. I like it. Everybody kind of answered the first question, but is there? How do you feel about working on something that you're maybe even a fan of, and maybe you do like, or maybe you're kind of utterly opposed to the direction that the movie's going?
That's something you just have to learn to deal with in this business, because that's going to happen a lot. You're going to have a very strong feeling about the way, if it's a known entity, you're going to have a very strong feeling about what you think it should be. And, a director's going to have a completely different vision. You're just going to have to deal with whether his words, the director's word is generally going to be the last word. You can fight for what you want up to a point, but eventually you're going to have to get used to the idea that this is somebody else's movie, and you're just kind of helping them along in bringing his vision to life. You can probably sneak in some ideas if you want, but basically, the director is leading charge.
Okay, well, Robin, I don't remember you being a comic book fan, but maybe you were. Do you have any opinion on this?
I will say that I don't really come from this background. I'm a little bit of an anomaly, I think, maybe with some of the guys. I spent a lot of time working with my colleagues in storyboarding, and they have kind of dragged me on lunch hours to many comic stores. So I have sort of been indoctrinated, or what do you want to call it, brought in to the comic world.
One of us.
Yeah, that's right. Like I've kind of got dragged in, and nowadays I'm actually working on a graphic novel now of my own, and so I did come to like it, but I'm still not somebody who looked at a lot of the superhero stuff, and that's not the direction of my own work at all. I forgot to mention in the earlier question that in addition to storyboarding, I do somewhat like Patrick. I kind of a little bit of a jack of all trades, and I do costume illustration, which you saw some of on the screen. I worked on Unbreakable, which, while not a comic book movie, certainly was made out of a love of comics by the director. It is interesting to work on films like that because there still is a lot of really interesting character to mine. I think that it's true exactly what Anson said. You have to just get over the fact that you're part of a big collaboration. working on any film, whether I'm doing costumes, whether I'm doing prop design, which I do, whether I'm doing production illustration, which I do, when I'm doing on-screen props, you know, artwork that is maps or artwork that's done by characters in the film that I'm creating to be shown. And actually, all of it is a big collaboration. So it isn't always going to be the way you want it to be. And you just have to get joy out of creating the work and feeling that you're serving this larger purpose. And as long as your piece of it is the best it can be, you know, I think that becomes rewarding in its own right. Plus, you know, like the other people here said, I love to draw. So the fact that I got out of school and was able to make a living drawing is fantastic to me, and I appreciate that every day.
Okay, Patrick, you're up to your elbows in comic book stuff. What do you think?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, like, how is it different working on something comic book inspired as opposed to just a straight on, you know, action or science fiction film?
I guess I kind of have to pinch myself occasionally because I'm like, wow, I didn't mention this either, but I actually, my portfolio for art school was comic book pages, and then I wanted to get to comic books really badly, but then I started finding out that I'm from the Bay Area, which is expensive to live in, kind of like Los Angeles is, and well, parts of Los Angeles for sure. And I remember I was talking to a mentor over in Georgia who was telling me about the rates and his rent, and I was like, your rent in Georgia is what? And how much? Oh, so I was living in San Jose, and I was like, I don't think I'll ever be able to buy a house, or it was like 22 at the time, and I was like, this is crazy. But back to the question of working on comic books and whatnot, when I'm not, like when I was working on Wrinkle in Time, it was like, well, I really didn't know the story that well or whatever, but when I'm working on the movie I'm working on now, I'm just like, whenever I'm kind of bummed or like I'm doing something that's just really ridiculous, because we'll be asked to do things just to prove that they don't work, oftentimes. And you're like,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
Are you kidding me? Really? I know. I'm getting paid well to do this thing. And we're looking at it going, this isn't going to work. I mean, we're like literally looking at like, you know, maybe like stunt performers who are doing something and it doesn't cut well, it doesn't flow well. We're like, but they've spent a lot of money on it. So they're like, you have, you know, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I have to do it. And so I make this, you know, shot try to work so that they can then go back and say, yeah, we're going to have to do it all digital. But, so, you know, like I said, you're getting paid well, and then when you're looking at the screen and you see like some of your favorite actors on the screen and whatnot, like with what I'm doing now with Post, you're like, man, if I was to ask myself, you know, as a kid, like, would I want to be doing this? I'd be like, oh yeah. So I just kind of, you know, take the good with the bad. You know, it's fun. Like on the Justice League, you know, it's just being able to see the raw footage and stuff. You're like, I mean, I'm not even a DC fan, I'm like a Marvel fan, but sorry, but Batman is like the exception. I say that, and yet I love Flash, the TV show. So it's like I'm kind of like, but as a comic book reader, I was always a Marvel comic book reader. But as an adult, I like, you know, I guess I did both worlds a little bit there. So that's pretty cool to be able to see the raw footage, and like we were laughing about how we know all of the what do you call them, spoilers for the next few years. We know them all, and like we have to just keep them inside. It's just kind of funny.
Benton? Just because my background is being you know, wanting to do comic book work, and I have done a little bit of comic book work for Marvel, a little bit. I did Wolverine versus Agents of Atlas a few years ago. It gets, you know, it's actually a little bit extra fun to when you get a call. It's for a superhero or whatever comic book type of.
Back in action.
A comic book type of project, and you know, just because, especially if it's one that I know. I remember actually when I was at ILM, well, not just at ILM, but I worked on 3 different versions of the Hulk, and they were all very, very different versions of the Hulk, and with varying degrees of success in terms of getting it, you know, at least what I think the Hulk should be like, and you know, it really depends on the director. Sometimes they're really receptive to your ideas, and they want to rely on your expertise, and you can, kind of help them and guide them through stuff that they might not feel as comfortable with. Others might have a very, strong opinion about it, and it might not be something you necessarily agree with, but like you were saying, you're there as part of the team, and you try and bring his vision or her vision as best you can to it. But I don't know. I feel like lately I've been pretty lucky. The last couple of comic book films I worked on were Logan and Wonder Woman, and I think as Logan, I was really pleased with that. I read the script after reading the script, and it was a little early version of the script that the first one I read, and it was like I knew this was going to be a hit because he's going in a direction which may not be necessarily the comic book work exactly, but it was a strong story first, and not so much the whole thing we've seen in a lot of comic book movies where it's just kind of an advertisement for the next movie. We actually try to make a story, and I really appreciate that when the director tries to be to do that, tries to make it something that a movie that anybody can watch, not just fans who are excited to see the character, but actually want to see a really good story. And I think Wonder Woman is the same way. I saw an early rough cut of it, and I'm very excited for that one as well. It's always fun to work on a comic book, and hopefully you always hope that the director and the people working on it are fans and know and understand the character. So it's always fun.
Well, I have like a mixed bag of regrets and successes. Like the Ed Norton version of the Hulk that we worked on. It was not only one of the best working experiences I've ever had, but it was also, I was very happy with the movie when I finally saw it come out. And then there's Batman and Robin. I cannot look at I can't sit for 15 minutes in front of that movie. It doesn't even matter what part of it is. Send you to the cooler. Oh, and I turned out some of the best storyboards of my life on that thing because John Dykstra gave me a sequence, left me alone. In fact, they forgot I was there, so I did everything but oil paint the damn things. And we went for 3-hour lunches. It was awesome, But eventually, after already seeing the Schumacher film before that, I knew how bad this is going to be. Come on. On the other hand, I did development work with the Derrickson. Yeah, for Doctor Strange, and the sequence I worked out. Actually, a version of it appears in the film, and I was really happy to see that. It's when he's in his astral form fighting while the doctor is trying to save his life on the operating table, and it was a pretty fun sequence, and I'm glad I got to do that. But I share all of your thoughts. It's like you sit there and you're working on Fantastic Four. It says, okay, Johnny Storm is who? Okay, all right. Ben Grimm is what? And they're all how old?
And I think it is important that the people who are working on it. I mean, that does make a difference when people know and appreciate the original source material, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But it can also be very kind of tricky because the characters in the comic books themselves have changed over the years, and like the version of Fantastic Four that we worked on is based on the Ultimate.
The Ultimate line.
The Ultimate. It's not the Kirby and Stan Lee version that we grew up with. So,
actually.
So there's always going to be that sort of conflict going there, and then also the director is not he's not a comic fan, and maybe he doesn't necessarily have a feel for it.
We've had a lot of back and forths on there because we were going on. Oh, this should have been a period piece, all of that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. You know what? We got 15 minutes left, and I think we can get at least that long. Take that long to answer questions. So, if anybody has questions, yes, right here.
Could you talk a little bit about where you fit in the filmmaking process.
Sideways, upside down.
Just kind of, what's your board used for? What's the life of them? Where do they go?
I can go quick, but we can go along right here. One of them is, there's different usages for storyboards, visual effects, stunts, continuity, when you're talking about and editing, when you're going to do reshoots later. There's a whole lot of stuff that boards can be used for, and you can wash your dishes with it, and it's a multi-use type of thing.
I can sort of address that. I worked on Wonder Woman in 3 very different phases of the film. We worked in the bid phase when the director, Patty Jenkins, was competing against another director to get the show, and she had to put a presentation together. And this is in the very early phases. She was more or less paying us out of her own pocket. Me and my brother worked on it, and it was like she got us together on on a Friday or Saturday night, and said we need to get this presentation done so I can get it done, fly it out on Monday. And it's like we had to really jam on this really quickly. And so we were able to help her get that gig with the presentation. And then later during the actual production, when the actual show is awarded, we also did some storyboards for that as well. But then also, I was called back, months later after finishing on the production boards. During post-production, we were doing some reshoots and some additional photography. And so Patty flew me over to London to work on some of the extra footage that they did. And they had already shot a thing that's more like post-boards, which is, once they've already shot stuff, they need stuff to fill in gaps and kind of figure out how things are working editorially. So it's 3 different phases, production, post-production, and pre-production, and pre-production, really, just as a sales tool.
It's also what camp you're with. Like, you could be only working with the visual effects people,
Right.
or you could be working with stunts. I worked on a film, The Scorpion King. Literally had 4 different camps: art department, stunts, the wire removals guys, stunts, the director, and the producer. So there was like 4 camps of people, and they were all. And then I guess they were using it to fight in a room later on. My vision, my vision. This one's better,
I have one more thing to add to that, to what everyone said, which is just another way to think about it. We do have all these different functions, but I think the earliest function is just helping the director really bring his vision alive to show the crew. Like, that is the most original usage of it. Then it migrates out into all these more technical uses. And we also the main reason we get paid, let's face it, is because they want to know how to budget the film. And that's really what they use the storyboards and then the previs for, is to figure out how much is this going to cost us. And that's really what makes the producers really want us on the movie, I think. Beyond all the creative uses, which there are many, as you just heard, part of it's just money. It's much cheaper to board it and pre-visit to find out if it's going to work and if people like it, than to try to do that, once you've got the whole production rolling. So we save them a lot of money.
Yeah, it varies a little bit on the director too, because some directors come from the writing and acting portion of the film industry, and others come directly from cinematography, and they basically will tell you in no uncertain terms what they want. And some is like, what do you think? Okay, let's spend 3 months figuring that out. Yes.
I think it might be related, following that comment, is how detailed are the storyboards required? Does it depend on the director, the usage they're going to do? Because I know that sometimes I see these amazing storyboards because they're going to end up in an art of book, perhaps. But other times I see some that I'm like, wow, really? Like very basic doodles. So what does it depend on?
Here's the harder thing, is that trying to get a job and not knowing just what samples to show, because I have both a faster version of my style and a tightened presentation style. And you have to show a little bit of both, because it's the preference of who you're working with. There's actually been a backlash against well-illustrated storyboards where they say, you're tightening it out, you're making all my choices for me, you know? And it's saying, I just want the basics so that I can get a gist of it, and then, you know, I can interpret it my own way from there. It's like you're intimidating, like I'm there to intimidate somebody, to bully them to do it the way I see it. You know, it's not that way, but it literally, I've heard that complaint.
I mean, it really depends. Sometimes they do want it for a presentation purpose, so they really want to impress somebody, and so they actually do want kind of pretty boards that, you know, that look at it, they can actually see the film in front of them, and the purse strings start to loosen. And then other times it's like you want high volume, and you can't just sit there and render the heck out of everything or make it extra pretty. You just want to get the idea across so that the director can look at an entire sequence, not just a few boards, but an entire sequence, know what it feels like, and reject it and change it if he needs to. But you can't sit and wait for beautifully rendered boards all the time. Sometimes you just need to get the basic thing across, and the director knows how to look at a board and understand it just from a few school of strokes. That's all you need. You don't need to do anything more. So these boards, a lot of boards are not there as an end unto themselves. They're part of a process, and they're there to communicate. Sometimes just as the director, and other times, yeah, you want to make them clear. You know, because they're going to be seen by the rest of the crew and some photographers or people who do the sets or whatever. But you know, it really depends on how the director wants to use it and what they prefer and how they prefer to work.
Well, also, Patrick could maybe go in on this, but sometimes, you know, your storyboards don't go from you through the director to the cinematographer. There's that step where there's animatics or there's pre-bids. And then, if their final presentation is going to be pre-bids, then it really does only need to be, scratchings on the wall or something really, quick and easy, as opposed to animatics, which is literally, it's an animated show. I mean, you're basically doing like 1960s Hanna-Barbera animation without color. You're basically doing, almost animating it frame by frame. So
it really depends on what kind of movie it is. You know, if it's talking heads or if there's all kinds of explosions and aliens and whatnot. So, obviously we're all working on more comic book or action. They call it, what do they call it? High concept movies. So they have lots of explosions and whatnot. So I was going to say I definitely add to the uniquely I work in post business right now, and what we'll do is we'll be saving a lot of money on the back end or of the movie towards the end, where there's doing a lot of visual effects, because the example that I can share, or you've seen right over the Hulk, was the cool thing that was creative about what I got to do for that shot when they were shooting at the Hulk. Was the idea is how does the Hulk react when he's being shot at? Is it just annoying, or is it really hurting him, or how does he act? And what's really cool is that we get to help facilitate that kind of. It seems like little minor points, but at least there's some creativity in there. And what happens is if they sent it in the past to a visual effects house, they would spend maybe a week or two on it, make the blood look like it's coursing through the Hulk's veins and everything. But it might not be what the director wanted, and maybe they want it to be animated differently. And we can do those kind of shots in like a half a day or a day, where we'll animate the Hulk and we'll composite it on the plate and kind of put on some little comp tricks to make it look like finished film. And then the director can kind of look at it and cut with other shots and kind of go, oh, it's not working or it's working. But it's kind of like having undo. It can be a blessing or it can be a curse. Having lots and lots of choices can sometimes make you just sort of say, well, let's just keep trying it until it works. But on the flip side, if you do know what you want, you can kind of rein it in sooner and more cheaply with previs and post visualization and all that. And then not just come back and get a shot that you made a lot of money for and basically have to just take it and say, well, I guess that's what we're going to do because it costs so much money to have them animated.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
This is for Robin. I noticed on the Spiderwick Chronicles you had like costumes. Do you work with the costume designers on like storyboarding out their costumes, or do they come up with these designs, or?
Okay, that's a good question. I'm actually in two separate locals, two separate unions. So I'm in this local where I do storyboarding and prop illustration and production illustration, but I am also in the Costume Designers Guild. And I work with the costume designers directly on the costumes in that case. And much like a lot of what they've talked about already, sometimes the costume designer will want more of your own research and input on the designs, and sometimes they pretty much already know what they want. I do enjoy research, so lots of times I will bring in a lot of references and sources and books of my own. And you know, the ones I have the best rapport with, I think we really enjoy that kind of collaboration. In the case of Spiderwick, that series of books had already been really beautifully illustrated by Tony Terlisi. So we had lots of beautiful things to work from. We didn't really have to invent those characters. And if you notice, my drawings, the designer and I stayed very close to the original design of Tony Terlisi. It did get changed. The very last one was the pencil drawing of how it ended up. But that had to do with the producers, like what they wanted. I think they thought that Tony's ideas were a little too eccentric. We love them, but it did get changed.
Well, occasionally, you know, people in our local get drafted to work with you know, the costumes people too, because Benton did some fantastic Asgardian costume designs for Thor.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with Alexandra, the costume designer on Thor, doing some Odin concepts, which was a lot of fun. I was only on it for a couple of weeks, but she wanted like full color rendered paintings, and I tried to sort of bring the grandeur, like a Jack Kirby type of Odin to it, with big wide, big shoulder pads and big wide headdress, and it was but also make it kind of realistic and viable as something that you could see in live action. I mean, they didn't exactly use them; they did almost somebody else's design, but it sure did inform the way they did other parts of the design.
Okay, well, we're going to close it up. You know, with the social media and everything, I guess I'm giving a little commercial here. You can follow us and maybe see illustrations and things like that if you go on Twitter and Instagram at ADG800. Is it case sensitive?
No.
Okay, so you don't have to hit the shift button or whatever for ADG800.
It's .org, right?
We're going to have an autograph session. If you want to talk individually to us, get us to draw on your body parts or something like that. We're going to be at Hall B, between B and C, like somewhere between there. So if you kind of feel yourself drifting to one or the other, we're kind of in the middle. And I am going to be here tomorrow, if you're going to be here tomorrow, and you have some artwork you would like to get a completely honest and brutal estimate on. I'm going to be doing a portfolio review at room 206B at between 2 and 3 p.m. I won't make you cry, but hopefully you'll walk away with a better understanding. Okay, so say that